Hey guys, welcome back to the Magfed Ranch Paintball channel, and today I'm going to be doing another Magfed Mondays. But as always guys, before we get into it, right, please subscribe to the channel, smash that like button, and of course, turn on your notification bell. I'm posting content every Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. But of course guys, please go check out our library. We have older videos on there. And just kind of gives more information, Magfed specific and FSR specific information, just so hopefully any of that information is useful for you guys out there. So go check out the library. And guys, please watch this whole video, but of course share and comment at the end. I love every one of your guys' comments. I love reacting, answering them, questions, anything that you guys would like to react or ask about. Okay, all right, so let's get into today's topic, guys. Today's video for Magfed Mondays is going to be in this hypothetical Magfed gameplay that I brought up and that we've been kind of discussing, on some of the social media pages, right? What would be the ideal marker and setup, loadout for this gameplay? All right, so that's going to be today's kind of my opinion, my choice. If I was going to, be the armorer for the team, right, that's going to compete in this hypothetical Magfed gameplay, if I was going to equip all the team members with a marker and loadout, what would it be? And so guys, before I get into that, and before I kind of give you guys kind of all my different recommendations and why here, let's talk about the gameplay real quick so that way you guys have some context. So in this hypothetical gameplay, I propose that the field size is 50 yards by 80 yards, right? So width-wise, it should be no wider than 50 yards, and lengthwise, it should be no longer than 80 yards. And the reason for that, guys, is to make sure that we get, action, right? There should be a time limit on it, so that way we're not having players just camp out and kind of just waiting to take those accurate shots, right? There has to be an objective. Like, let's say it's either capture the flag or obviously, hitting some type of buzzer, maybe carrying a hostage from like one end of the field back to your home base. But there's got to be a time limit involved, and there's got to be an objective involved, which is going to facilitate, in essence, encourage action, right? Encourage gameplay engagement, right? Firefights, in essence, okay? I propose that it's going to be 10-minute to 15-minute games, no longer than that. 5-man teams, maybe 6 men at the most, right? But I think 5 men is a good number, okay? And FSR only, right? I've talked about this before, guys. We need to push FSR because that's where it's going to really showcase and highlight what Magfed is all about. It's going to show the capability, the accuracy of these markers. It also allows us to use the whole field. See, that was the other thing too, right? That's kind of why I made these kind of suggestions at these field ranges, right? Because at 80 yards, with a highly dialed in marker, that I'm going to go over with you, one example here, you should be able to get headshots out to 80 yards. So in essence, we're talking real firearms, right? Real steel type accuracy and gameplay for the whole length of the field, right? We're not talking about lobbing rounds in and, firing a bunch of shots to hopefully get your, hit on target. We're talking accurate placement shots if you aim, if you zero your optic, all those things, right? And ensure that you're using FSR to get these accurate hits, okay? So that's kind of why I thought about all those different dimensions, FSR only, Magfed. Okay, the other things when it comes to our marker, I propose no remote lines, right? So it has to be just an all, by itself marker capability, right? So we're talking 10 CI or 13 CI tank. And the reason why we don't need bigger than a 10 or 13 CI tank, guys, is because I've talked about this at some of my other like I said, other platforms. I think our loadout should be no more than 100 rounds of FSR. That is your max loadout. And depending on the marker that you're using, right, whether that's a M17 like I have here, or a T15 that I really love as well, EMF 100, 468, SAR, right? Any, maybe the TGR, I don't know too much about that marker, right? But any marker that is FSR capable and that has obviously magazine fed has a max loadout of 100 rounds. Okay, so for example, let's say if you had an EMF, right, that would be 5 magazines of 20 rounds. Okay, so 100 rounds total. Air system of 10 CI to 13 CI, no bigger than that. All enclosed, no remote lines. Okay. Optics, obviously you can use whatever optic you want to. Obviously just no laser sights, right? You can't be shooting lasers and potentially, blinding people with lasers, but any red dot, any, magnified scope, like this crossbow scope I have here, is allowed. And then in terms of chest rigs and vests, right? Any vest or chest rig is allowed, but obviously, like I said, you can only carry up to 100 rounds. There's no accessories that you need to carry, but obviously, if you want to carry like a squeegee, anything to clean the marker perhaps, things like that, I think there should be a little bit allowed, right? Maybe some wipes to wipe down your optic if you need to, but nothing like obviously sharp that would cause a safety issue. And of course, like, anything that would be against normal paintball rules. I know paintball has some weird rules where you can't have specific colors and that type of thing. Anyways, guys, right? So just kind of your basic general loadout, and of course your goggles. Okay, so that's kind of the general gameplay, right? Time limit, size of field, 50 yards by 80 yards, loadout of 100 rounds or less, 10 CI or 13 CI in buttstock, in tank buttstock setup, no remote lines, optic of your choice, just no lasers, no those type of things. Okay, so with that premise, guys, what would be, right, today's topic is what would be your ideal marker and its loadout and setup, okay? So here's my particular choice, and I'm gonna go over why, okay, guys? So I specifically chose our MR, right, SDMR, right? It's kind of the clone of the H&K SDMR rifle. It's got a 16-inch rifle barrel, right? I'm using a crossbow scope. This one is the OptiSpeed. I believe this one is from True Glow. Yep, it is. True Glow OptiSpeed. And of course, the marker is based off of the Vulcan M17 with the heat core. Okay? So I guess let's talk barrels for real quick. We'll go from tip to butt as always, right? The reason why I chose this particular marker clone and this particular length barrel is because I believe, and from my testing that I've tested with all the different barrels, guys, I've tested barrels from 6 inches all the way up to 20 inches. And specifically, I've told you guys, they are the Hammerhead one-shot barrels. However, I will be doing some testing with the Lapco barrels here in the future, so hopefully I'll give you guys those results. But with the Hammerhead barrels experience, I found that the 16-inch barrel is a good compromise between length, right, size of the marker, mobility, maneuverability of the marker, but really high, freaking accurate and precision out to 80 yards. Okay, and so with the 16-inch barrel for first strike rounds, especially if you're using match grade first strike rounds, you should be able to get 8-inch groups or less at 80 yards. Okay, and so on average, let's say we're using just, FSR out of the package, you should be getting 10 to 12-inch groups on average or less with a 16-inch barrel. Okay, but like I said, with match grade rounds, you should be getting 8 inches or less from 80 yards and in. So we're talking headshots, guys, at 80 yards and in. That pretty much has your whole field coverage, right? This hypothetical 50 by 80 yard field. Okay, so that's the reason why I went with this barrel. And on top of that, lengthwise, it's not overly big, right? It's still maneuverable. You can still get around bunkers. It's not too unwieldy as like an 18 or 20-inch barrel might be. I also went with this marker real quick because a lot of people think that a marker like this, just looking at the size of it, and the M17, it's more patterned out of an AR-10 rifle versus the T15 AR-15 platform. But the thing is, the M17 is polymer. right? So the Vulcan M17 is polymer, and so actually the body and the receiver of the M17 is actually quite light. And with the M-LOK style handguard like we have here on our SDMR, the overall weight of the marker is actually quite light. I've weighed this marker, and it's on our website as well, guys, but an unloaded marker with the magazine in it, right, with no optic, of course, is right at 6.6 pounds. Okay, guys? So fairly light marker for a full 16-inch barrel marker. The other nice thing about the M17 too is because of the air system and because it's all polymer as well, the heat core is where the primary weight of the marker is, and so it's all the way to the back of the marker. So when you're actually going to shoulder the marker, all the weight is actually right back here. So the marker is not very front heavy. So you can literally hold this marker up for quite a long time because it's very front light, okay? With the M-LOK handguard, 16-inch barrel, all the weight in the back here, it's actually a very easily maneuverable marker, even though the size of it looks big, okay? Compared to maybe an equivalent T15 style marker. Now let's talk about weight real quick. Maybe this is something I would like to do on a different video, but real quick, guys, I think there's a lot of misinformation about how much these markers weigh. Everyone's saying like how light the EMFs are. But you guys have to remember, if you're just looking at the standard EMF, yes, it's right about 3.5 pounds, right, for just your standard EMF. But we're not talking an air tank, and we're not talking a stock. I don't know if they're weighing that with an unloaded magazine, but let's say that they are, right? So let's say an EMF with an unloaded magazine is 3.5 pounds. But once you add the stock, right, like let's say the EMF, the Eclipse, PWR stock with the 13 CI tank, now you're talking about a 5.5 to 6 pound marker. Right? There's websites online that will tell you guys what the weight of the marker is, but these markers are about the EMF with the PWR stock and the 13 CI tank. It's starting to get, like I said, about 5.5 to 6 pounds. And so not much lighter than our M17 here, full size with the rifled 16-inch rifle barrel, okay? And in our hypothetical gameplay, I would probably remove the iron sights as well because they're useless in essence, they're just for show. So that would cut off a few ounces as well. So now we're talking about closer to a 6 pound marker, right? So very similar in weight, maybe a half pound more than just your EMF. So not that much heavier. And I'll give you guys another example. For example, our honey badger here with the short barrel and everything like that, this thing only weighs 5 pounds, right? So the T15, even with the full body weight, if it's a small compact marker like this, right, it only weighs right close to 5 pounds, okay? And the MR18 we have here, Mod 1, with the 10-inch barrel, it only weighs 5.8 pounds. And so we're talking real close to an EMF 100 with the PWR stock and air tank. For example, our honey badger here with the suppressor is 5.56 pounds. Without the suppressor, it's only 5.16, so it's actually lighter than the EMF. So the EMF is not that much lighter than these other markers, guys. I think it's just, it's just when you start comparing apples to apples, if you build it out the same exact way, they're very similar in weight. Okay, but anyways, going back to the Vulcan M17 and specifically our SDMR here that I'm going over. So the reason why we chose it is because I chose it as an ideal because the barrel length gives you that accuracy out to 80 yards. We're talking headshots out to 80 yards. The weight is very balanced. It's not that heavy. The heat core makes the weight all the way to the back of the marker, so it's relatively, balanced. The cool thing I like about the M17 real quick too is that it already has, right, ambidextrous selector switch, so you can use it for both left-handers and right-handers. And then also, it already has right? Full auto capability, okay? So we don't have to add full auto capability. It's already got full auto capability. With the optic too, I'll get to the optic here in a second, but with the optic too, a lot of the weight is, like I said, just to the back of the marker here, and so it's very balanced. And like I've weighed this marker just the way it is with the optic too, guys, and it's right at 9.1 pounds. Okay, so right at 9 pounds. And like I said, if I took the iron sights off, it's a possible chance it's going to be under 9 pounds. So we have an under 9 pound marker that's highly accurate, highly balanced. Okay, with full auto capability as well. Now let's talk about the heat core. Why I chose this marker over the T15 as my ideal marker if I was going to choose a marker is because of the consistency, guys, right? The M17 is not as efficient as the T15. The T15 is going to have way more shots per tank versus the M17, right? There's a reason why the M17 has this, kind of bad reputation as an air hog, right? I've talked about the air leak, right? The little small air leak that the heat core has, but in general, it just uses a lot more air to operate the marker versus the T15's blowback design, okay? But in this hypothetical gameplay, our max loadout is only 100 rounds. And also, in this hypothetical gameplay, the matches are only 10 or 15 minutes long, right? It's not a 16-hour, 20-hour, all-day affair. So that little small air leak that the heat core inherently has doesn't come into an issue. And then also, the efficiency of the heat core, a 13 CI, even a 10 CI tank is plenty to shoot 100 rounds of first strike, okay? And so with the 13 CI tank, you're going to be totally fine in this, 10-minute, 15-minute, 100-round match, okay? But where you're getting the benefit is that consistency, right? I've talked about the different consistency between the M17 and the T15. And in our testing, the M17 is usually a plus or minus 5 feet per second, 5 or 6, whereas the T15 can be normally a plus or minus 8, but it can sometimes get up to a plus or minus 10. So what that means is just better accuracy once again, right? With the hammerhead rifle barrels, your group sizes, the windage is very good, right? Because with the rifle barrel, it eliminates that windage deflection. I've talked about this before, but what happens with a non-rifle barrel is that when the round comes out of the barrel, you can literally see it in midair just shooting out with no spin. And then you'll see it literally stop in midair, catch itself, and then start spinning. And so that kind of variance is going to create, obviously, windage, left to right dispersion, right? Inaccuracy, less precision. So with the rifle barrel, you're not going to get that. It's literally just going to come out pre-spun, and so your precision is going to be a lot better left to right. Where the elevation precision becomes bad is when your consistency, when your FPS consistency is off. And so with the T15, when you get that fluctuation of plus or minus 8 or plus or minus 10, that's when sometimes you'll get a high shot versus a low shot, right? And so if you go zero your marker at a given distance, and let's say that FPS goes up, it might shoot a little higher at that distance. If the FPS goes down, it's going to shoot a little bit lower. And so with the M17, the heat core, you get less of that dispersion, and so your groups are going to be tighter versus up and down compared to the T15, okay? And like I said, with the group sizings, with a 16-inch barrel, you should be expecting 8 inches or less at the 80 yards with match-grade ammo. With the T15, we've typically seen that with our MR12 clones, and those have 18-inch barrels, right? But when you get that velocity inconsistency with the T15, that precision can definitely go off a little bit. Okay, but anyways, the M17 is definitely more consistent, okay? Let's talk about the optic real quick, why I chose this particular setup and optic is because, one, the crossbow scope gives you that efficiency, right? The reticle efficiency of being able to shoot targets from up close, 20 yards and in, all the way out to 80 yards without having to adjust, your riser or anything like that. So truthfully, guys, if I was going to run this setup, I would probably eliminate the riser as well, and I would just get, a non-adjustable riser that would be close to the height distance of the FS adjustable riser here. Because in this hypothetical gameplay, we're not shooting past 100 yards. This riser is meant for shots past 100 yards, okay? Because with the reticle in our variable speed crossbow scope, it has reticle holds all the way out to 100 yards, okay? And I stated before in previous videos, guys, that the reticle on a crossbow scope closely mirrors the trajectory of the first strike rounds. But as the distance increases, it starts becoming a little bit less one-to-one because the FSR is not as heavy as a crossbow bolt. So at 80 yards, the reticle hold is approximately 105. And so with the variable speed crossbow scopes, you have reticle holds out to 100 yards and approximately 105. And so literally you can use this crossbow scope without having to adjust your riser and literally hit targets up close, right? Using just the center crosshair, the 20-yard crosshair, right? That's for any 20-yarder in engagement. And then at 60 yards, right, your reticle hold is about 70 yards. And then at 80 yards, your reticle holds about 105, like I was telling you. So literally you can just change your holds on the reticle without having to do any different major adjustments. That's going to save so much time for all the different distance shots that you might have to take in this hypothetical gameplay, right? So when we first start out, both teams are at 80 yards from each other, and you can literally hit head-sized targets at that distance with this marker setup and with this optic, okay? With the red dot, you could use a red dot like on our MR18 here, but the problem with that is that you're gonna have to either one, I know for sure at 80 yards your hold is going to be way too high. You won't be able to see your target in the red dot, in the red dot's tube. Okay, okay. So you're going to have to adjust the riser down, and usually it's about 6 to 7 clicks, somewhere around there, for an 80-yard shot. Okay, I think somewhere right around there. It might be up to 8 clicks. I'm trying to remember here. Okay, and then at a 60-yard shot, it's about 5 or 6 clicks, right around there. And then at a 40-yard shot, it's about 2 clicks. So obviously at 40 yards and in, you can do your holds, right? You can just put that little red dot above your target. But once again, you're not really having a crosshair or a reticle that you can put on your target. You're kind of just holding this dot above your target and kind of guessing. And then of course at the longer distance, you're gonna have to make this adjustment, whatever that hold happens to be. Now granted, you could save some time by etching, and putting marks here on your riser so that we can say, okay, hey, that target's at 40 yards, 50 yards, let me make that adjustment and then go take my shot. Again, once again, it's just one more setup, one more step to take to have to make these different shots. Whereas with the crossbow reticle, you can literally just, okay, bam, 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 I take my 20-yard shots, okay, bam, 60-yard shot, bam, 100-yard shot, 80-yard shot, just use the 105 reticle, bam. I have a video, guys, in our library where I shot 3 targets, one at 20, one at 40, and one at 60. And you can see I'm not, I'm not doing precise aiming, I'm literally just transitioning from one to one. And I hit all 3 targets smooth and fast without having to, change anything. I just got to change my holds, okay? Now real quick, I know some of you might ask, some of you that might be more familiar with all the different crossbow scopes, you guys might ask, well, why won't I suggest the fixed magnification like that Hawk XB30 there, or our UTG 4x32, okay? The problem with those scopes, the ones that just have a fixed magnification, they don't have reticle holes out to 100 yards. They're usually either capped at 50 yards or 60 yards for some strange reason. Okay, so they don't have any reticle lines past 50 or 60 yards. They're great for the fixed magnification, all right? You get that really clear sight picture, either 3x or 4x, versus only the 2.5x that you get with the variable speed crossbow scopes. But like I said, you don't get the reticle holes. And so then once again, you're kind of guessing the hold, or you're gonna have to go make the adjustment with your adjustable riser. Okay, so the variable speed scopes, I think, is gonna be the way to go. Real quick, why is the variable speed scopes only at 2.5 magnification roughly? Well, it's because you have to tune the magnification, or the scope technically, to the speed of the round that you're firing. And so since our rounds are shooting at approximately 290, right? No more than 300 feet per second, but in this hypothetical gameplay, I would probably suggest like 280 or 285, right? So the variable speed scopes are set at that speed. So once you set your scope at that speed, you can't change it, otherwise the holds are going to change, okay? So that's why, okay? I know the supremacy scope is a little bit different because it has, I believe, a first plane reticle instead of a second plane reticle. But once again, I don't really like the supremacy scope's reticle. It's a little bit busy. I feel like it's not going to be as fast for this style of gameplay that you're trying to make really fast engagements on. But hey, I think this gameplay will prove it, right? If we actually had this gameplay, we'll come to find out, hey, which scope works best, which marker works best. Okay, so guys, that's the reason why I chose this marker, right? It's because of that, the accuracy, the consistency, the optic setup to be able to cover the whole field, 80, the fairly, lightweight but balance of the marker. Okay, that's the reason why. If I was gonna choose a hypothetical second place, I guess, or if I was gonna maybe choose a different marker platform, I would probably choose a shorter barrel platform like this MR18 we have here. This thing is decently, like I said, just good enough accuracy out to 80 yards. With non-match grade ammo, you should be able to get 10 or 12-inch groups on average with this. Sometimes maybe a little bit higher. That's the only reason why I suggested the 16-inch barrel. But once again, with match grade ammo, you should be getting 10 inches groups or less with the shorter barrels. Okay, and maybe, like I said, just maybe I would maybe choose something like our Honey Badger here, just because of how light it is, how just maneuverable it would be in this gameplay. And like I said, with first strike rounds, even with a short 6-inch barrel, you're still going to shoot out to 80 yards, no problem. It's just the accuracy is not going to be as good, right? Out to 80 yards, you're probably getting, 15, 16-inch groups. So that's still hitting a man, but you can definitely miss a man-sized target out to those distances as well. Whereas this one is getting literally headshots out to those distances, okay? So it's a trade-off, right guys? It's a trade-off of size, weight, and maneuverability for the accuracy. Okay, let's talk about the loadouts real quick. What vests I would recommend. I have a Blue Force gear here, guys. I would use something like a very lightweight chest rig, right? It's almost like what do they call it? A feather chest rig or something like that, right? Just something super light. This one's right here from One Tigress. It's an airsoft one. This one's obviously a Blue Force one for an AR-10 setup. Like I was telling you guys, the magazines for a M17 is slightly bigger than an actual AR magazine, right? And so you want to be able to, have a decent sized pocket, right, to fit it in there. So you notice how it fits in there really nice, and it comes out really nice with an AR-10 size magazine pouch, but it still holds it in there really nice as well, okay? So you would go, bam, 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 empty the marker, pull out, got another one. Now this one only has 3 magazine pouches, but it has obviously Molly to attach another magazine pouch, extra one if you like here, or even Blue Force does sell extra pouches of this flexible, almost like spandex material design that you can attach. So I would run something very similar to this with just 4 magazine pouches, and that's it. That's all I would need. Or something like I said, like this one Tigris one, where it already has 4 magazine pouches. And bam, you just have to put it in, right? You've got 4 magazines just straight across. Just the thing though is, like, in this hypothetical gameplay, I wouldn't see a need for these other pouches, right? Because we're not playing any scenario gameplay where you're gonna need really other accessories. It's literally just a run and gun elimination type of style gameplay. Although this pocket would be cool to hold whatever, like I said, maybe squeegees or whatever else like you might need in that short gameplay, okay? I would definitely also carry a dump pouch, so that way we're not losing these magazines during the action, right? And so I would carry some type of, either belt, or which this one is, but it also has a thigh strap as well too, so that way it's not bouncing around. I really like this one. This one's from Condor, right? So it's kind of cool, right? Airsoft or even real steel gear works. And guys, that's another thing. I'm hoping that through this gameplay, all these other, ancillary products, right, support equipment manufacturers will start getting into it and start building Magfed specific gear too. That would be really cool. But like, yeah, a dump pouch like this would be super useful. You just, bam, instead of having to put it back in your pouch, you just dump it in there, good to go. I've never had this thing once pushed in place. I've never had it accidentally come off in the field, even crawling around or jumping around. So this thing works really well. And it holds up to 6 magazines, but like I said, in this hypothetical gameplay, we're only having to hold 4 spare magazines, worst case scenario, right? If you end up shooting all 5 magazines, okay? And then let's talk goggles real quick. You're gonna wanna use something low profile, especially in the kind of that chin, cheek weld area. We talked about this, guys, right? Due to the in-tank buttstock, and obviously having to use an optic, right? It's gonna push your face up, and the riser's gonna be having to be too high if you don't use a fairly slim, flexible cheek weld area mask. So I really like the push unites here. The Dye i4s is another good one. Although I know the new Dye i5, they give a little bit more chin protection, but that's obviously gonna give you obviously a little bit more distance, right? But with the push unite, right, we talked about this. You can see the optic no problem. I can see my optic no problem. My head is up. I'm not having to kink my neck over. My head is up. I can see the reticle no problem. I can make the adjustments, right? I can be in the down ready position, or the high ready position, right, or the low ready position, and bam, just propping it up, and it's ready to go. Don't have to shift my head, shift my neck, or anything like that. Gives me plenty of protection, and let's be honest, the goggles just look dope as well too. But I like the Dye i4s as well too, guys. I have a set that I played back in the day, my Dye i4s, in that kind of that multicam pattern. Okay guys, that is my ideal marker setup, and then also loadout, guys. What would be your guys' ideal marker setup and loadout in this hypothetical gameplay that we're proposing, right? I would love to hear it in the comments. All right, guys, let's talk about it. I think it's cool. we should start pushing towards this gameplay, get our setups ideal, and then obviously see which one's the best. All right, guys, love you guys. Peace. Talk to you guys next time.